On May 31st, 2019, Disney unveiled its most expensive ride ever built, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge and Millennium Falcon Smuggler's Run, which cost over $1 billion to develop. To contextualize, the average American earns $1.7 million in their entire lifetime, meaning this one ride cost nearly 590 lifetimes of earnings to develop. However, in 1952, such grandeur was impossible for Walt Disney. His dream was to create a park based around his animated films, a place where families can enjoy clean, wholesome fun together. Unfortunately, he was completely unqualified. He made cartoons, not 200-acre entertainment complexes, hosting millions of dollars in complex mechanical equipment like roller coasters and steamboats. Despite Walt's lack of qualifications and financial backing, he embarked on the journey to build Disneyland, facing skepticism from all sides. Even Roy Disney, his own brother, thought it was impossible. After all, a theme park is a massive financial endeavor requiring an army of talented people. They would need architects, show designers, mechanics, and a span of other professions. Could an average Joe build a theme park from scratch? Walt's commitment to his vision marked the genesis of Disneyland. In the beginning, Walt was alone with this dream. Nobody thought he could do it. He had to teach himself the skills, find the right people, and obtain the financing to make Disneyland a reality. Today on Theme Park Forge, we explore the remarkable story of Walt Disney's transformation as the first ever Imagineer and the birth of Disneyland. If you enjoy this video and share a passion for Imagineering, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe to my channel. So buckle up for Theme Park Forge. Walt Disney was a dreamer. His entire life is a testament to the power of imagination combined with grit and determination. By the 1950s, he had already pioneered synchronized sound in cartoons with Steamboat Willie, created the first full-color cartoon with flowers and trees, and released over 7 full-length animated feature films from Snow White in 1937 to Cinderella in 1950. But dreamers are never content to rest on their laurels. Walt had a new idea he wanted to try. One day, Walt took a break from running his studio to take his daughters to a local amusement park. Back then, there were no theme parks. They didn't exist yet. The park they went to was full of kiddie rides just big enough for a child and her little sister to ride. There were bigger rides being made back then, but they were too intense for little girls. Walt watched his daughters laughing and smiling as they waved to him from the little car. Walt was sad that there were no rides that they could enjoy together. Walking home at the end of their day, Walt noticed that the park was shabby and unkempt, with poor landscaping and presentation. Thinking back on business trips to Europe, Walt remembered the parks there and how well managed, clean, and manicured the landscaping was. Why were American parks so dirty? They made it to the parking lot, and Walt loaded his girls into the car to drive home to Carlwood, California, where they lived. During the entire drive, Walt could not stop thinking about the park. He had a passion for building model backyard trains. Why not have a train in his park? What if he had a place where his kids could meet their favorite cartoon characters like Donald Duck and Mickey Mouse? Disney Studios was in the middle of filming 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. What if he brought back the submarine as a set piece and put it on display in the park? The idea was too infectious to let go of. As the days passed, Walt kept revisiting the idea of building a theme park. Why had no one ever done something like this before? Full of enthusiasm and excitement for the future, Walt went to meet with his brother Roy Disney. Where Walt had the big ideas, Roy was the one that figured out how to pay for them. They were like the Wright brothers learning how to fly, or Bert and Ernie from Sesame Street. Of course, Walt was Ernie, the fun one, and his brother Roy was Bert, the practical one. Perhaps it is no surprise that when Walt talked to his brother about his new idea, Roy was less than thrilled. The studio needed the money. Why would he spend that money on a whimsical amusement park? The company was making a lot of money from Cinderella, but they were $3 million in debt. They were getting ready to borrow another $2 million in order to finish making 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and to start making Lady and the Tramp. Not only that, but it wasn't Walt's company anymore. They had a board of directors to answer to, and they would not be happy to learn that funds needed to make movies were being diverted to build a kiddie park. Abashed, but not dismayed, Walt decided if he was going to make his dream come true, he would have to do it himself. He wasn't without resources when he began his project. He had his years of working with talented people, and he had Hollywood connections he could draw on. But first, he had to come up with a name: Walt Disney Enterprises. But when Disney Studios Board heard about the name, they said no, it was too similar. Roy gave Walt an ultimatum: you can start an amusement park by yourself if you really want, but you're not allowed to use the Disney name. What was Walt to do? He called his new company WED. It was a made-up acronym that sounded like a word, but it was actually Walt's initials, Walter Elias Disney. So Walt literally used his own name for the company. What a trickster. After he had his name, Walt found an old bungalow to set up shop. A practical wooden shack at the back of the Disney Studios property, the bungalow had no heating and no cooling. It reminded Walt of working on the Mickey Mouse shorts over 20 years ago, at the beginning of his studio. Disneyland was basically a garage startup. Disneyland is known today to be one of the best theme parks in the world. Back then, however, it was just in Walt's head. Before it was called Disneyland, it was called Mickey Mouse Park, and before it was hundreds of acres, it was just going to be 16 acres on Riverside Drive across the street from the Disney Studios in Burbank, California. It was just big enough for a railroad train, some paddle boats, a petting zoo, a carousel, and maybe a sound stage. It was Disneyland on a budget. Even with this much more modest dream, Walt still needed financing and still needed talented help with this project. He assembled the first Imagineers to help him create Mickey Mouse Park. Meet Roger Broggie, Harper Goff, Bill Cottrell, Richard Irvine, and John Hench. These 5 men were some of the very first Imagineers to get on board. Each had specific talents that would lead to Disneyland's founding. When Walt Disney first envisioned Disneyland, he needed someone who could help turn his imaginative concepts into reality, particularly in terms of engineering and technical aspects. Broggie's reputation and skills made him a natural choice for this task. In fact, Broggie had already helped Walt build a train for his backyard and would be invaluable in making Disneyland a reality. Harper Goff, an artist, designer, and Imagineer, collaborated closely with Walt Disney in conceptualizing and designing Disneyland. His artistic vision and talents were instrumental in shaping iconic areas of the park, including Main Street USA, Adventureland, and Fantasyland. Goff's initial concept sketches establishing the nostalgic and charming atmosphere of Main Street set the tone for the entire park. His contributions played a significant role in bringing Disneyland from concept to reality and continue to be celebrated in the park's legacy as a pioneer of immersive theme park experiences. Bill Cottrell, another significant figure in Disney's history, was an engineer and Imagineer who played a crucial role in the development and construction of Disneyland. Cottrell worked closely with Walt Disney and other Imagineers to turn Walt's imaginative ideas into tangible attractions and experiences. His expertise in engineering and technical design was invaluable in bringing many iconic Disneyland attractions to life. Cottrell's contributions helped shape the innovative and immersive nature of Disneyland, and his collaboration with Walt and the Imagineering team was essential in realizing Walt's vision for the park. Richard Irvine, an architect and one of the original Disney Imagineers, made significant contributions to the designs and development of Disneyland. As one of Walt Disney's key collaborators, Irvine played a vital role in transforming Walt's vision for Disneyland into a reality. He was instrumental in the planning and layout of the park, working on everything from the overall architectural design to the arrangement of individual attractions and themed areas. Irvine's expertise helped create the cohesive and immersive experience that Disneyland is known for today. His legacy lives on in the innovative design principles and meticulous attention to detail that continue to define Disney parks around the world. Last but not least, John Hench was a legendary artist and Imagineer at Disney. Known for his profound influence on the design and development of Disney theme parks and animated films, he worked closely with Walt Disney himself and played a pivotal role in shaping the aesthetics and storytelling aspects of Disneyland and subsequent Disneyland parks. Hench's artistic talents were showcased in numerous Disney attractions, including It's a Small World, Pirates of the Caribbean, and Space Mountain, where he contributed to the overall design, color schemes, and visual narratives. His innovative approach to theme park design, characterized by meticulous attention to detail and a focus on immersive storytelling, have left an indelible mark on the Disney legacy. Hinch's contribution extended beyond the realm of theme parks. He also made significant contribution to Disney animated films, collaborating on classics like Cinderella, Peter Pan, and Sleeping Beauty. Hinch's impact on Disney creative vision and aesthetic legacy is profound. His work continues to inspire Imagineers and artists with the company and beyond. Without each one of these men helping Walt, Disneyland may never have happened. The story of Disneyland grew in the telling. Originally planned to be a small part of the Burbank studios, Walt decided it should be more of a park than an exhibit. Next door, there were 16 empty acres that would work wonderfully for Disneyland. Disney and his small band of Imagineers began to make plans. Walt visited nearby Knott's Berry Farm to get inspiration. At this point, it had been open for over 30 years, and back then, it was an actual farm, famous for its berry patches. It still had rides, but they were simpler, like stagecoach tracks and a steam train. But Walt wasn't there to have fun. He studied guest flow and operations, and how landscape and architecture affected people's mood. He wanted to know how to make his future guests feel curious, or how to make them feel comfortable. Walt even got a chance to talk to the manager of Knott's Berry Farm at the time, Wendell Bud Hurlbut. He was glad to talk to Disney about how to operate a park and even shared with him insider tips and tricks. Meanwhile, Disney sent a team to Europe to photograph the attractions and park architecture he had seen years earlier. Richard Irvine began contacting machine shops and amusement manufacturers to find a supplier who can make custom attractions for Walt's park. John Hentz began his work making models of what Disneyland could look like. He and Walt would pace around the empty lot full of weeds, imagining where the train would run and where the snack carts could be. Harper Goff was responsible for designing the first map, a piece so famous it's guarded in the Disney archives. But all this planning would be for naught if Walt couldn't source financing. He would need to invest a lot of his own money, he would need to build new revenue streams, and find risk-tolerant investors. Walt even took a loan against his insurance policy for $100,000. He also began a new TV series revolving around the legendary figure of Zorro. TV was a brand new technology, and there were a lot of controversy around the new medium as traditional theater chains felt threatened. Bill Cottrell was put in charge of leading the writers to create this exclusive show for television. There were several investors interested at the beginning, but most of them fell through as they wanted to make Disneyland a carnival instead of a theme park. Charles H. Scrubb offered to help fund Walt's dream. He owned a few dentist offices and a minor league baseball team and a racetrack, which meant he had experience in location-based entertainment already. However, Scrubb wanted it down by the beach to attract more tourism. Walt knew a location like that would turn his park into a tourist trap. His park would end up resembling the piers that already existed and that were infamous for drinking and gambling. Because of the creative differences, that investor ultimately fell through. Walt still needed to proceed, however. He hired an architect firm. They told him his vision would never work for 16 acres. He wanted so many attractions that he had forgotten the parking lot in his plans. People would need to be able to park their cars, and they would require at least half of the available land to do so. Even today, ironically, Disneyland still struggles with parking. Walt decided that the architectural firm did not share his vision for the park as they did not see what could be done. He fired them and made the controversial decision to rely completely on his Imagineers and hoped they could do it despite them not having enough expertise to pull it off easily. Determined to push the park through, Walt came up with a tricky plan to get his brother Roy on board. Walt asked a few people to go around the Disney studios with a tin can and ask for donations from the employees there. They collected a few bucks, but the important thing was getting Roy's attention. The effect was that the peer pressure won out and Roy finally began to take Walt's Disneyland dream seriously. Later, in Roy's office, the two brothers discussed the idea. When Roy heard about how his brother had cashed in his life insurance policy and had already spent well over $100,000, Roy knew his brother was serious. He would help, but they would have to do it the right way. Disneyland would not be a fly-by-night park built on the cheap. Roy finally convinced Walt that 16 acres was too small. Disneyland should be at least 100 acres. Roy was not as creative as Walt. He was not a serious animator or artist, but he did know money. and he knew that in order to get banks and investors interested, they would require collateral, and that collateral would come in the form of land, which the bank could repossess if Disneyland failed. With Roy's help, the corner lot idea was scrapped, and the search was on for a large property to host Walt's dream for a beautiful, family-oriented amusement park. Before Disneyland found its home in Anaheim, there were actually multiple locations on the table, from Carlsbad to places in South Los Angeles to the San Bernardino Valley and to Orange County. It was tricky to find a location as they needed to optimize it for tax codes, utility rates, as well as find a place that would have a favorable climate and only have a few owners to buy the property from. Finally, they decided on Anaheim with its farming community, freeway access, and closer proximity to South Los Angeles area. At the time, the area was completely rural, a picturesque location. With an original purchase of 160 acres and the capital needed to build the park being secured, Walt's dream was finally underway. There would be more stress, more sleepless nights, more conflict with employees, business owners, and government officials, and more disappointment and triumphs. But the ball was finally rolling and picking up speed. It started out as a zany idea in Walt's eccentric brain, and through hard work and diligence, Disneyland was about to become a reality. There were still challenges. The Disney Studios was deep in debt. Shareholders were skeptical about the company building an entertainment venue that they really had no business being in. But Walt, Roy, and the Imagineers had their heading. They sought investors in earnest as well as sponsors. It would be a long and difficult road, but they would eventually get it done. It's interesting to track the idea of Disneyland. It started as an unconscious seedling in Walt's imagination as he made cartoons or toured European parks. That seed sprouted in a kiddie amusement park he took his daughters to. That sprout grew leaves as Walt educated himself to become the first ever Imagineer. As he gained support, his dream grew and was nurtured by the talents of men like Roger Broggie and John Hinch. With Roy's help, that dream began to blossom. Nowadays, it's hard to imagine a world without Disneyland. There have been millions of happy memories made there, and its dedication to art and technology have inspired thousands. All this was made possible by one tiny seed of a dream. Thanks for watching Theme Park Forge.